Hi, this is the WTF SDK zone creation tutorial part 4. So in the previous tutorial, we've always been working with this starter zone and we're finding the visual elements of the zone, including transitional effects and weather effects. So if you've actually been playing around with a variation of your very own tutorial project, there's probably something that's been bothering you. And I'm just going to demonstrate fairly quickly. So here's the zone, everything's fine, but if I walk off the edge, it actually transitions back to the exact same zone with the exact same starting point. Obviously the weather in the background is changing every time the zone is being reloaded, but this really doesn't seem right. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is to introduce a second zone and properly link the two zones together to create a seamless back-to-back zone transition. Alright, so let's close this first, and we're back to the editor, and I'm going to create a new zone. And to do that, just have to hit the create button under the zone tabs, obviously, and I will hit edit on this. Obviously the first thing you want to do is change untitled to something more meaningful, like desert zone. Now the rest of the zone creation process is going to be a repeat of the previous one, so I am not going to narrate too much. So I'll probably just try to work as quickly as possible. And obviously for those who starting to forget how to work this part of the creation process, it's a pretty good review of that. Here I have the tutorial project folder open, and once again I want to make sure that I import all the things that I need into the tutorial project folder. So starting from the background, I'm going to import these background images. Alright, and obviously move them down appropriately. Oops. Alright, now I need to actually give the zone a little bit more space in order for the looping effect to occur. And obviously I need to actually add some scrolling speed in order for it to scroll. So once again, I want to make sure that the scrolling speed on the foreground is 1.0. Let's make the midground scrolling a bit more pronounced. So I guess I can scroll the background a little bit too. That's for that nice effect. So that's pretty much all I'm going to work on as far as visuals are concerned. One more thing that I want to do before I start working on the transition is to make sure that the character layer is correctly placed. So I need to go back to the zone panel, and so once again the character layer is stuck at the background layer, which is the default layer, and I'm going to change that to the foreground layer and save. So obviously the player currently has no access to this particular zone, so before I add in any transitions, I really can't test this. Alright, so then let's get started on the transitions. Basically the plan, and I guess I can draw it up in this sticky note here, is to create a series of transitions that basically places the zones back to back and make the transition seamlessly loop around the entire world. So let's say this is the starter zone, and this is the left edge, and this is the right edge. What I want to do is to create a transition so that when I walk all the way to the right of the starter zone, I end up on the left edge of this desert zone. And obviously, which means that if I walk off the left edge of the desert zone, I want to end up in the right side of the starter zone. Basically, the same thing happens on this edge. If I walk off the right edge of the desert zone, I should go all the way to the left edge of the starter zone, and obviously vice versa. If I go through the left of the starter zone, I would end up to the right of the desert zone, which basically creates a complete loop that just goes on and on and on. Alright, so that's the plan. So let's start taking a look at the actual transitions that we're going to work with, and you can see those in the transitions panel. Now, you would be surprised that quite a bit of components were already created when you step into the transition panel, which that includes 4 entry-exit points and 2 transition points. And I'm going to quickly go over these. There is a left edge transition area, a left edge entry point, a right edge transition area, a right edge entry point. So these are going to be the ways that you get out and enter the levels. And then there's 2 extra points, one called the default entry point and one called the portal entry point. So the default entry point is the point that the player enters the level if that's the level that the player starts the game on. It is also the entry point that's being used if none of the transition entry points are set up properly, which you probably don't want that to happen. And since the desert zone is not the zone where the player starts at, this point is actually kind of meaningless. But it needs to be there, so we'll leave it alone. As for the left and right transition points, left and right transition areas, so these 2 are the ones that we want to work with, because what happens is transition areas are basically points in the map where if the player walks onto it, a transition happens. And when you drag a transition area either to the left or the right edge, it gets bound to the edge. So basically means that it only happens when the player completely walks off the screen. But since these 2 are already defined and kind of all ready for us to set up, let's just use the ones that came with the map. So according to the plan, I want the left side of the desert exit to point to the right side of the starter zone. So here's the transition point to the left of the desert zone, and all these settings I will probably have to go over in the wiki, which would be coming anytime soon. What I want to do is to set it so that it goes to the starter zone, and I want to use the enter right entry point. So these are actually renameable, but obviously by default some very helpful names have been entered. So I'm exiting from the left side and I'm entering on the right side of the other zone. Now I'm going to go over to the right edge, transition to the exact same zone, and then let's double check. So I am at the right exit of the desert and I want to transition back to the left edge of the starter zone. So I am going to enter from the left. Alright, so that's all I have to do for the desert zone. Now I'm going to hit save. Close that. And I'm going to work on the starter zone now. So first thing that I want to do is probably to fix the zone width, since that's probably a little bit too much. So let's Ooh, that's probably too small. And I've kind of erased some part of the zone, so I'm going to start over. Alright, much better. And as you can see, these left and right transition points sticks with the edge, even though I've been altering the zone size pretty dramatically. And if you remember from our previous test, this is exactly the point where the player spawns. And let's make it interesting and have the player spawn a bit to the right at the well. Alright. And as you can see, you can also work with the transition points there at the mini-map. And they function exactly the same as the ones up top. Alright, and let's look at our plan again. And obviously you can do this on paper when you're working on your own. Alright, right edge of start to the left edge of desert. So, right edge. And I'm going to hit the desert and use the left enter left entry point there. And on the opposite side, desert zone. And I'm going to hit the right edge here and save. Alright, now that I'm all done with this, I am going to test. Back to my tutorial project. And you can see that I've actually started at the well instead of the other part of the zone where I originally started in all the other tutorials. So once I walk out the left edge of the starter zone, I end up on the right edge of the desert. So if I keep running this way, I'm going back right to the right edge of the starter zone. And I can basically do this all day. And obviously, you can link more than two zones together by using the same theory I apply here in the transition effects. If you want to, you can also, I can quickly show this to you. You can actually block off specific areas if you don't want to have a looping scenario like this. And if you want to experiment a bit, you can even create some transitions that are in the middle of the zone, or you can, as I demonstrate here, block off areas. And in order to block off a transition location, instead of using the instant type, I use the block type, and you can see the coloration and the icon of that particular transition area change. So a quick save and a quick reload. And now if I try to walk off the left edge, I would be stuck. And that's basically what a block does. Alright, and that's it for all the zone tutorials that I'm going to create. And I guess I will see you next time.